He's the #1 challenger, and still he don't get a shot at the title. So working with a guy like Sylvester Stallone, he's a perfectionist. There might be people that just don't like you for whatever reason. A lot of people out there don't like me. I deal with it.
Mr. T's path to stardom is the most unorthodox and intriguing in Hollywood history. He was never meant to be an A-list star. He wasn't classically trained, he didn't emerge from theater, and he didn't ascend through the usual ladder of TV guest shots or live theater. Rather, he burst into popular culture like a clap of thunder. With his gold chains, mohawk, booming voice, and iconic catchphrases, Mr. T overnight became a larger-than-life figure. But behind all the fame, toys, and Saturday morning cartoons that sported his face stood a man who fought with some of Hollywood's biggest stars. His dominant personality, refusal to compromise, and refusal to be pushed around left him as feared backstage as he was adored by audiences on screen. From spats with co-stars to wars with directors, his career was punctuated with dramatic showdowns that illustrated how complicated his journey through fame actually was. At the center of his conflicts was the reality that Mr. T wasn't an actor, he was himself. While other actors pretended to be something else, Mr. T portrayed life itself. His greatest asset was this sincerity, but it also meant that he refused to bend to Hollywood politics and hierarchies. Unlike so many others who entered the business humble and ready to learn and bend, Mr. T entered with the same vigor that he used in the ring, on the streets, and in life. Bold, unyielding, and willing to confront. And this irked some. The first big fight of Mr. T's Hollywood career ensued on the set of The A-Team. The series, which debuted in 1983, was intended to be an action-adventure light show headed by seasoned actor George Peppard. Peppard, who had appeared in classics such as Breakfast at Tiffany's alongside Audrey Hepburn, was the obvious professional anchor of the cast. He had decades of experience, classical training, and that kind of Hollywood credentials that led him to assume he would be the unchallenged leader both on and off camera. But it didn't turn out the way Peppard had hoped. Although Peppard's character, Colonel John Hannibal Smith, was supposed to be the brains, viewers didn't fall head over heels in love with the smooth strategist. They fell in love with B.A. Baracus, the tough, gold chain sporting mechanic portrayed by Mr. T. Children emulated him on schoolyards, yelling, "I pity the fool," with enthusiasm. Merchandising flew off store shelves bearing his image on lunchboxes and action figures. Although Peppard had hoped to be the leading man, it was Mr. T who emerged as the cultural sensation. And Peppard detested it. Early on, the tension brewed on the back burner. Peppard would make offhand comments about Mr. T having no training as an actor. He'd eye-roll whenever Mr. T uttered his now famous one-liners. He started to arrive late for sets, particularly those in which Mr. T had center stage. But then contract talk started. Mr. T's representatives, cognizant of the explosive popularity of Mr. T, demanded an increase, a big one. The network wasn't too slow to agree. His salary was increased over Peppard's, and when Peppard heard about it, he was furious. It was demeaning in his eyes. How is this newbie with no credentials, no training, and no Hollywood connections raking in more dough than a seasoned pro like him? Peppard didn't remain private about his sentiments. He started to voice them in interviews, attacking Mr. T's acting skills directly. In a magazine profile, he was quoted labeling Mr. T not a real actor and implying he was the worst on-camera performer on the show, lowering its quality. When Mr. T read that magazine, the feud was brought to a boil. He stormed over to Peppard's trailer, holding his magazine, and started reading the quotes aloud in his deep voice for all on set to listen. Crew members stood by and watched as he yelled, insisting Peppard emerge and defend himself in person. Peppard would not, remaining barricaded in his trailer as Mr. T ranted at him from outside, denouncing him as a coward for hiding behind interviews rather than speaking truthfully. It was embarrassing to Peppard, the legendary Hollywood veteran brought low to a man who hid in his trailer. After that, the two hardly uttered a word unless the cameras rolled. They traded lines with icy accuracy, but as soon as the director called cut, they went to different sides of the set. This wasn't a one-time thing. Mr. T's direct, no BS nature conflicted with more than a few co-stars. Melinda Cooley, Amy Amanda Allen on the A-Team also experienced the wrath of his annoyance. Cooley wished for more substantial storylines for her character and pressured writers and producers to allow her to be an active contributor to the team's missions. Her demands were not unreasonable, but contributed to delays in production and interfering with the highly planned television shoots. To Mr. T, this was whining and ingratitude. He felt they had all of them to be grateful for the success they were reaping and concentrate on bringing the formula that clearly audiences adored. The two had clashes in the midst of production delays, with Mr. T condemning her calls for rewrites and revisions. Though the tussle was more professional than a blast, it sealed the truth that Mr. T cared about efficiency and spontaneity above what he perceived to be overanalysis or meddling. Cooley eventually quit the show, her exit being rumored partially because of in-house tensions. Dirk Benedict, another co-star of A-Team, also got along fine with Mr. T in the beginning. Benedict was a laid-back and professional guy, a soothing influence who constantly attempted to calm down his more contentious co-stars. But even he found himself in conflict with Mr. T in time. Their conflict was over the development of Benedict's character. Benedict had collaborated with writers to make his character face more nuanced and subtle. Mr. T believed these slower, more character-based scenes slowed down the action and needed to be trimmed so that more of BA's tough-as-nails scenes could fit. To Benedict, this was diluting his artistry. To Mr. T, it was keeping the show topically correct for what the fans truly desired. The fight got further out of hand when Mr. T made a remark that some of the actors were more interested in their own on-camera time than the show's success, something that was personally jabbed at by Benedict. From there, he no longer attempted to be a peacemaker, and the set became more fractured than ever. But it was not just the A-Team. On the Rocky III set, Mr. T clashed with none other than Sylvester Stallone. Their origins predated the film. Years before, Stallone had attempted to bypass security in order to meet heavyweight champion Leon Spinks. The bodyguard who blocked his path? Mr. T. Stallone never forgot the hulking figure who would not move, and when he needed a realistic-looking villain for Rocky III, he knew whom to call. Mr. T was given the role of Clubber Lang, and his natural intensity made him the best fit for the part. But shooting wasn't smooth sailing. Stallone, a perfectionist director, had rehearsed every punch and movement precisely to minimize risk and maximize believability. Mr. T, however, thought some of these moves weren't consistent with Clubber's tough, Street Fighter persona. He started improvising punches and positions, disrupting the meticulously planned choreography. Stallone, caught between honoring Mr. T's instincts and keeping matters under control, gave more rehearsals and occasionally shot multiple takes of scenes to try out various ideas. Though this collaboration enhanced the film, it slowed production and increased expenditures. As the filming continued, Stallone also saw another thing. The media were addicted to Mr. T. Press junkets designed to highlight Stallone's victorious comeback frequently became hijacked by Mr. T's charm and catchphrases. Whereas Stallone responded to questions about filmmaking technicalities, reporters hung on when Mr. T discussed life, ruggedness, and philosophy. To Stallone, who had created the franchise from scratch, it was infuriating to watch his nemesis hijack the spotlight. The commercial success of Rocky III was not in question, but neither was the tension between the two men. Carl Weathers, Stallone's co-star and the actor who played Apollo Creed, also had his own problems with Mr. T. Weathers, himself a former pro athlete, took pride in his refined boxing style. He felt the choreography for the fight had to be neat and realistic. Mr. T, on the other hand, went with brute force, insisting that Clubber Lang's strength was born of the street, not the ring. Their rehearsals turned contentious, Weathers challenging him to become more polished in his technique, and Mr. T insisting that real was more important than slick. The disagreements interrupted rehearsals, and while the final movie found a balance of both styles, the two men never compromised. And then there was James Caan. Their work together on a television movie promised to bring out the best in both, combining Khan's method, acting intensity with Mr. T's raw authenticity. But soon enough, their respective methods conflicted. Khan was a firm believer in rigorous preparation, backstories, research, psychological breakdown. Mr. T's approach was easy. Learn the script, take from life, and give it with honesty. This seemed slack to Khan. Khan's way seemed pretentious to Mr. T. Their disagreements turned into philosophical differences about what acting actually was. For Khan, it was craft. For Mr. T, it was connection. Neither was able to persuade the other, and though the movie worked out okay, their working relationship was irreparably damaged. In all of these battles, there was a pattern. Mr. T wasn't about to bow to Hollywood hierarchies. He wasn't about to let other people tell him how he needed to do things or who he needed to be. This defiance attracted people who appreciated his honesty and scorned him as difficult or unprofessional. But one thing was certain, he wasn't someone you pushed around. Even years afterward, tales of his battles with co-stars are the stuff of legend. On the one hand, they describe a man whose obstinacy lost him friends and work. On the other, they depict a performer who wouldn't bend to fit into an industry based on artifice. Mr. T was perhaps the toughest man in Hollywood to work with, but he was also one of the most memorable. His fights with Stallone, Peppard, Weathers, Benedict, Cooley, and Khan weren't petty squabbles. They were the fights of a man fighting to remain himself in a world that always insisted on conformity. And maybe that's why, years after the A-Team went off the air and Rocky III became a memory in film history, Mr. T is still a cultural icon. His gold chains, mohawk, and thunderous proclamations are still instantly identifiable. He may not have played by the Hollywood rulebook, but he redefined it on his own terms.